Welcome to Build Out Brief. This is Jim Kunkel, and I so appreciate your support of the Build Out live stream that broadcasts each Wednesday at noon Eastern Daylight Time. The live stream that you're watching right now will be starting in just 1 minute. Let me take this opportunity to talk about Build Out Brief. This content series is a result of viewers like you who overwhelmingly requested that I add a supplemental series to Build Out that centers on professional business topics, is more focused, and global on guests. If you're thinking about starting a live stream, then StreamYard is a platform for you. It's what I use to build you Build Out Brief. After the stream, see the comment or the description section for my special savings referral link. Now, when it comes to having a professional live stream and winning over viewers, you need to make sure that your graphics and supporting promotional items are the best. All of the creative content for Build Out and Build Out Brief are designed and produced with Canva. You should check out Canva. See the comment or description section for my special Canva referral link. Hey, Karl, welcome to Build Out Brief.
Great to be with you again, Jim.
Hey, Karl, you and I have had an opportunity twice already on my daytime live stream on Wednesdays on Build Out live stream. We had the opportunity to talk about different topics. And, for those viewers who might not know Karl Davenport, could you provide a little bit about a little bio on yourself and what you do?
Yeah, I've been 35 years in the coatings and chemicals industry. I went to Eastern Michigan University in 1987. I worked most of my career with Lilly and Valspar. I have my own LLC, which I set up in 2020, Project Management Innovations, to help clients with project management. And I'm a director at ChemQuest, which does a lot of work with chemical specialties and paint and coatings companies. And so along that journey, one of the major projects that I worked on was a facility in Ireland. And that's what I'd like to talk to you about today, as far as partnering with a key customer when they need to expand on a global basis.
Excellent. And Karl and I are going to have a conversation related to the importance of global expansion. When it comes to global expansion, sometimes you might have to have it because of a single customer or maybe a particular need within industry on the global side. Can you go into a little bit of detail about really what it means about global? What's really global expansion when it comes to a corporation?
Well, many corporations, especially in the paint and coatings industry, they're servicing global customers. And some of those customers, when they're expanding into another region of the world, they don't want to change coating suppliers typically. They want to use the same coating. They may have similar specifications for their products. So to partner with them is really important. And if you're a smaller division or a smaller company, the size of that customer, the one that's growing, it could be even more important for sustainability for your business to be able to partner with them and grow. Product can move overseas and it can move back. There's a lot of manufacturing that's moved back from overseas as well. But the project dealt mainly with going into a place that was very remote, very different from anywhere else that the company had made product before.
And this can be very critical for blocking competition, controlling, let's say, the customer, your biggest client, and sometimes also to maybe maintaining your market position within a certain industry, correct?
Absolutely, because if you don't partner with them, it may not meet the customer's expectation that you're just going to ship product, let's say, from the USA and ship it into Europe. They may want technical service. They may want the coating to be supplied directly to them because they can avoid, importation and excess cost. So if you don't partner with them, then it opens you up to your competitors because if they're serious about expanding, then they're going to they have to find a way for that supply.
Excellent. And before we start talking about the case study, one of the quotes that you included in here from Charles Darwin that I really stuck out for me. I love the quotes that you do, and I encourage people to check out your LinkedIn profile. You quote some very amazing innovators and also thought leaders as well. But the quote is, "The most important factor in survival is neither intelligence nor strength, but adaptability." And that's what your case seems to focus a lot on, is that adaptability aspect.
Yeah, being adaptable enough to produce a product 3,000 miles away from your home base. You don't know where you're going to get raw materials, how you're going to get them, how are you going to staff, what does the landscape look like for doing business. But again, that's the expectation from the customer.
And then when it comes down to the evaluation process or element of, really looking at this global expansion, what goes into that?
Well, the first thing that goes into that is finding good partners. And they may be able to help you vet or do due diligence. The customer has an expectation. They want liquid coating in their facility. You need to understand, are you going to be able to actually do that? And then partnering with suppliers, it could be engineering firms, it could be the local government there. And really, it's establishing a deep relationship, a deep partnership to be able to find out all that's available to help you learn everything that you need to know to both validate that you can make the product there, and then it's going to be a smooth process moving forward.
Very interesting. Very interesting. So if you want to, open up and talk about the case study? I believe this takes back in the 90s, roughly?
Yeah, it goes back to 1995, and Lilly Industries is not around anymore, so I can talk about them. In the early 90s, they acquired ICI's Glidden industrial business. And what that meant for one of their facilities in North Carolina was consolidation of production from 3 Glidden facilities into the High Point facility. So High Point had to be modified to accommodate all of that business. Most of, if not all the business, was tank wagon business. So you're making 20 metric ton batches. So capital investment into High Point, where they were already making tank wagons, but maybe 20 to 25 a year. And then they went to 500 a year. And the largest chunk of that industrial business was through a company, which was at the time was International Paper. So International Paper communicated to Lilly around 95. They're going to be expanding into either Poland or Ireland. It turned out to be Ireland. So the partnership was very strong at that time. A lot of the relationships were built through the technical, not just the sales team. So the specification for the specific coating, it's called door skin enamel, and it's probably in your house or you've seen it. It's probably in 60% of the homes within the U.S. and they're expanding into Europe. But that coating was super key to their process. So they reached out. We want to be supplied in Ireland. And so that began the process for, okay, we need to find a site in Ireland. Who can we partner with in the government to look at different sites? And so a supply agreement was formed. So you have that relationship with the customer. But again, you're 2 separate companies. So yeah. The following steps were to, identify a place that would be close in Ireland, but not right next to the International Paper facility, which is now Masonite, Ireland, right next to them. But we wanted to be close. So that was one of the constraints is what kind of building. And in 95, based on the differences in the product that IP was making, we hadn't even finalized our formulation. So the formulation is in flux, which meant raw materials are, how big is the facility going to be? what's going to be the volume forecast, things of that nature were question marks. Towards the end of 95, International Paper let us know that they were going to be delayed maybe a year working on their environmental acceptance. At that time in the 90s in Ireland, a lot of investment from the EU. If you've heard of the Celtic tiger, it's not the Boston Celtics, it's the Boston Celtics, as the Irish would say. But there was no question that the facility was going to go ahead. They just had additional steps and hoops that they needed to jump through as far as establishing the regulation. So that allowed Lilly to finalize the formulation, identify the exact location where they were going to have the site, do the design, the engineering design for the facility. There was investment in High Point earlier in the 90s, but based on everything that we learned, we were going to have a state-of-the-art facility as far as the new one in Ireland. But then evaluating raw materials, it was a very special latex emulsion that went into this product that was formulated actually by Glidden. When Lilly made the acquisition, they got the rights. So then that had to be toll manufactured, which ended up being Roman Haas. Roman Haas doesn't exist anymore either. So we had to find the locations. Roman Haas available in England. Some raw materials could be sourced in Belgium. The titanium wasn't an issue. That was going to be readily available. And then later on decide, hey, where are we going to get all the equipment for this facility? So to give you an idea how remote the location was, it was in County Leitrim, which at that time had 20,000 people in total, that entire county. You had to drive 45 minutes to see a traffic light. The village where the building was, which was an IDA, Irish Development Authority building, and they were very helpful with helping Lilly find the location and some initial engineering contractors. So that village had 500 people. So you're very remote. We also knew that some raw materials were going to have to be provided from the U.S., the special materials that go into the grind, and we ended up making blends of those that were made in High Point and shipped into Ireland, and they were shipped by container. So we had to establish that supply chain. If you fast forward to today and imagine all the disruptions that are there, some due to COVID, there's supply shortages, the ports are backed up in Los Angeles. And so you had to work out your plan for how you're going to get all of your raw materials to be able to make your product. And through the Irish government, and I'll give credit to Ernst & Young, we had some specialists there that were able to look at our materials, and we worked with them to determine that they weren't available in the EU. So therefore, we were able to get some tariff exemptions on the importation of those raw materials that were only used in our product. And that helped maintain that margin, the profitability for making that product.
Well, a lot of project considerations going on there. Now, related to the permitting process, how difficult was that?
It was thorough. Mm-hmm. When the company was established, Lilly Industries Ireland Limited, we were one of the first 10 companies to get what was called an EPA permit. Masonite International Paper that was there, they had number 1. So we were 10, and we came about a year after that. So it follows the process of ISO 14001, which you establish, your goals for EHS, but then a very thorough examination of all the raw materials, any emissions, any noise that were going to be generated as part of the operation, and then came up with a plan for addressing those, reducing those where where you could. So that process took about 8 months, but we had a jump start because of the delay. So we had our permit actually well before we were under the gun to start manufacturing the product.
I see. And the other thing too, in the what I found interesting when I read the case study was the element of that the investment upfront, the investment that was going to be made had to be sustainable. What was meant by the word sustainable in that context?
A lot of things went into that. There were a lot of companies coming into Ireland, not the Intels, but other where they were provided. Ireland, the IDA would roll out the red carpet for the companies that would come in, and they would operate for 2 or 3 years, and then they just stopped. So the success rate, we were determined that we wanted a long-term facility. That's another reason we didn't want to be right next to our customer. We were close enough to where we could deliver 4 tankers in a day, but we were looking long-term at other possibilities within Europe. This was at the time for Lilly, the only wood facility that was there. There was another one in Germany, but they couldn't make the product. So when I say sustainable, it was going beyond just the initial investment that was provided by the IDA, but then make a long-term. We were invested, number one, with our customer, and wanted to be there with them, but then it was looking at the possibilities for other products throughout Europe. And that happened a long time after I was gone. The site is still operational. In 2019, I was able to visit the location as part of a journey back to Ireland. They're still making the product for Masonite Ireland, and they make a handful of other products for other customers in Europe.
Very sustainable, very sustainable. So, obviously this is occurring in 1995 timeframe. You have obviously Republic of Ireland. And if I remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't there a lot of transitional period going on between the two Irelands?
Yes. In 1998, they said that there was actually a formal ceasefire. Shockingly, there was a pretty large bomb that went off in a city called Oma, and Oma was maybe less than 50 kilometers from where we operated. But yeah, it was a very I think overall a good time, with the exception of Oma, which was a big shock, but a time of renewal, so to speak. The borders, you used to have to go through an inspection to go into Northern Ireland, and that border was only 6 kilometers from where we operated. But at the time I was there, you could freely cross the border into Northern Ireland, drive up to Belfast or even other places, Bushmills whiskey, and of course Portrush golf.
Yeah, and the government, from what I read in the case, was that the government really wanted to make this deal happen and make it workable for everybody, if I remember reading that correctly. Yes,
absolutely. They were committed.
And it sounds like if the operations are still there running, labor, because you think the remoteness of it might have a challenge regarding labor pool and everything like that, but it sounds like the village or the local communities were enough to support the workforce.
Ireland is an amazing place. At the time that we were initially hiring, I want to say 60% of the applicants had worked outside of Ireland. There was a high rate of unemployment, which meant a lot of young persons had to go abroad. They had to go to England or France or Germany or to the U.S. to find work. So what you found was a very diverse and very experienced staff level. We, at full employment, we had 8 people at that facility, and we probably went through, just for the general operators, maybe 5,000 applications. It was so you had to be selective, but there was just a lot of talent. Of course, I think I had mentioned to you when we were talking on another topic about the trade schools that are in Ireland. So They were very popular then. They're even doing much better right now. So you have a lot of trades with electricians, mechanics. So you could even hire some of them as operators as staff. But we didn't need the maintenance department. We had 3 operators that were pretty much able to repair everything. Now, 3-phase 480 volt, we had to bring in the electrician to take care of that, of course.
So in the element of the due diligence and everything related to quality control procedures, and obviously the other operations such as IT and everything like that, even being back in that time period, there was a heavy emphasis obviously on modernized equipment, technologies that could go into the facility, including computer-based systems and things like that. What type of due diligence was done in the aspect of this being kind of remote in a way, but also too being, very practical and operational for the needs of that facility?
Yeah, the process for due diligence really isn't any different today. Like I said, we had the opportunity, we had that year to design the factory. So the latest devices for measuring the levels in the tanks, which are transducers. The mixers that we had were variable speed drive mixers up to 250 horsepower, which we could control with a dial. So at the time, we invested in almost state-of-the-art equipment that was going into the facility. MRP system, an early version of Batchmaster, which is now known as Sage, but Batchmaster was the MRP system that we selected. So all of those things would go into the due diligence. The movement of the materials, all of the vessels were on load cells if they didn't have the transducers. We even had a truck scale. We put in because we were going to load the tanker, and so when we delivered the tank wagon, the product, it had the weigh sheet. And for loading or unloading, because we would unload resins in bulk. There was a new electrical transformer that went in for the project. So all of the electrical was the best that you could possibly buy at that time for paint and coatings in 1997.
Very interesting. In addition to working obviously with the Irish government, what I found fascinating was that you had project managers that would go out into the local community and meet with them. It sounded like there was great involvement with the local community leaders and the local community to kind of have a friendly, hey, we're your neighbors now, we're part of your community. This is an opportunity for us to be friends. And I like that outreach that was done. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. That was a very key part of the project. In a small village of 500 people, we were on the newspapers, Lilly's coming in, major manufacturer, etc. We met with the representatives in Dublin that were, let's say, like what would be the equivalent of a senator or representative. We met with them initially, and then we met with the local representatives that were in that county or in that city. And our location, the factory, was along a road called Willowfield Road. And we actually went door to door with all of the families, every house that was on that road, introduced ourselves, what we would be doing, asked if they had any concerns, everything that we could share with the project. And when we applied for planning permission, that's what it's called in Ireland, and we also made a contribution for street lights and what they call a footpath, we would call it a sidewalk, which wasn't on the road. We did those things, and we were happy to do it. But there were no questions to our planning. So there was no delay in the start of the project. Once the project was the factory was ready, we had made a few large batches. We invited the village, and we invited the people from the road. They came to the facility. We had a few refreshments. We They were able to see the tanks, the equipment, and again, some of the representatives. And we also had representatives from International Paper from Masonite that were there. So we were welcomed with open arms in the village, but I think it took that commitment. I was fortunate enough to live in the village as well. So if anyone had any issues, I was there almost all the time. And so it was, I think, a really good example. Even if it's not in Ireland, if you're moving into a new locality to meet your neighbors and understand what are their concerns and what are they doing. I mean, if it's a latex-based materials, there's not a whole lot of chemicals that go in. But if they're not used to seeing any chemicals whatsoever, or the noise, or the maybe they're concerned about the truck traffic, whatever it might be, then just having that relationship, and if they have a concern, they can knock on your door and talk about it and get it resolved.
Yeah, it's great to have a good start, but as you quote an Irish proverb, a good start is half the battle.
Absolutely. I mean, all of that, the message in the global expansion is, within your due diligence, and when you have that, don't leave any stone unturned. Prepare for the unexpected, your supply chain, the future employees, the community outreach, avail of whatever the government can provide as far as expertise or knowledge of how to do business in the region, and do all of those things. They're necessary for you to be successful, because you're new to the area, and and again, back to that word, sustainability. If you're serious about being there for the long term, then building those relationships is key.
Yeah, and I think too, the aspect too in the case study about, getting special status with the EU, being able to work with the EU, obviously that helped with the profitability and the operational capability of the facility itself.
Yeah, you're mapping out your entire supply chain, and a lot of businesses are good at this. But then when you're in a new region of the world, the time it takes to get materials from containers, all of that has to be built into your supply chain, and that timing. And even in our case, we would have to place an order with High Point, with North Carolina, to provide them enough time to make the product, get it on a container, so that it's a seamless flow of materials. But it's very, very important considerations for any offshore. It's very different, or it can be it'll be different challenges. You'll have different challenges with your supply chain, and having a plan to address that is crucial.
And to kind of conclude our conversation, what I'd like to do, I'm going to read these off of the case study. A summary of the key aspects to success when you follow your customer around the world and making it a success. The first takeaway, obviously, is verify that you can produce what is required at a new location. That is probably the first most important aspect to look at.
Well, it's connected with the second one, which is the customer satisfaction. So
yeah,
you're not doing yourself any favors. In fact, it's worse if you can't validate that you can make exactly what the customer wants, and know that you're going to be able to satisfy the customer requirements. Then you're really in trouble.
Very good. And you covered the second one. The third, cultivate a close partnership with an aim on a long-term relationship with the local community at your new location. That was super critical for the success of this project.
Absolutely. Partnering with the community, and there's a sense of pride that can be developed. The community is proud to have you there. They're very supportive. And can be times when business gets tough, and maybe you have to reduce the headcount or by one or two people. And it's important that that's understood within the community. And, business can have a cycle. You may gain a new customer, and then you're going to be able to hire again.
Very good.
Also,
Okay.
good environmental, if you're not creating a lot of noise, you're not having any releases into the environment, and there's no smells or odors that the neighbors have is also very important.
That is correct. That's so true. And the next is ensure that the smallest and largest details are evaluated properly before launching your project.
Yeah, the large details could be that specialized equipment that you need. We were able to find stainless steel tanks or a fabricator within Ireland, but the motors had to be imported. The smallest detail could be who's going to supply the fuel oil for your heaters. It's cold in January in Ireland, so how are you going to manage to find that? And the heaters that you have might be unique. Another small detail might be learning the idiosyncrasies of the town. What time do you start? We started at 8 o'clock in the morning, and everyone was amazed that it would be like you and I starting at 4 o'clock in the morning. 8 o'clock in the morning is not when the Irish start their day. They start at 9 or 10, especially in the villages, but then they may work till 10. So being able to explain why we did things a certain way, any of those small details actually help build the relationship with employees and with the village.
Yeah, and the next one kind of leads into this too. Understand, explore, and avail of all government assistance provide for your business at your new location. Leaning on the local community, leaning on the governmental as well.
Well, it's always better when you're being encouraged or you're getting some investment to come in. So the lease on the building was X amount, which we got a great deal, but we wanted to lease in around it in case there was a possibility of expansion. So we were allowed to work that out. And then having the government put you in touch with the right people at Ernst & Young that know about import EU regulations and how that can impact your business. And also finding the right contractors or the engineering firm. We hired all Irish engineering, mechanical contractors, and the general contractor in the area. And the government or even the representatives were very helpful in leading us to them, and then vetting the right contractors. Yeah. And that should be true everywhere. Even if you're doing an investment in China, it's always better when you're being welcomed in and they really want you to invest in the area. And when they do that, then there's a lot that they can provide, because normally you're not the first one that's coming in, and this is the way that it's their job to help you. So you would be remiss not to get their full help.
Perfect. And you just actually covered that next key, which was obviously dealing with the contractors and things like that, finding the best. And then the last key, and it's the most important, execute plans wisely and ensure that the proper level of corporate support is provided to the new business. And it sounds like the plan was wisely thought out, executed as near as perfect as possible, I would say. And then also too, you had the support from the parent.
Yeah, and that goes back over 2 years to the genesis of this project, because in 1995, you had executives from Lilly that had went into Ireland, met with the IDA, and looked at a few facilities. So that process had started 2 years before. So there's not enough. There's not enough time and people to think that I talked about that technical relationship that existed between the Lilly formulators and then the technical staff at Masonite IP vetting the products, because there were several major runs where Masonite may have to stop their line in Laurel, Mississippi, and run for 2 or 3 days on this product to make sure that it was going to be the right one for Ireland. So you had that connection, and then the the engineering team at Lilly, the internal cooperation between the technical team, engineering, operations, corporate support. You had all of the key executives from Lilly went to this small facility just to see it and to meet the people. I'll never forget Doug Hume interviewing one of the operators, and the operator had a little diary that was there, and Doug Hume wanted to see it, and the operator was scared. He thought he was going to be in trouble. And then Doug shared, he says, hey, when I worked, I kept a little book or something that helped me understand the key activities that I had for the day. So even though you were remote, and you had to be self-reliant because your headquarters or the key division was in High Point, 3,000 miles away, it was necessary that you had to be self-reliant, but at the same time, you got encouragement and you got involvement from the corporate team.
Oh, very good. Very good. Karl, is there anything related to the case study that we didn't talk about that you would want to leave with the viewers? Is there anything?
No, I think we covered all of the key parts with regards to the planning, the due diligence that's involved, and just having the right mindset to go in to set up a remote facility and partner with the customer. Excellent.
And one more time, how can viewers and others out there get in contact with you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. Project Management Innovations is my own LLC. I'm also a director at ChemQuest. If you go to the ChemQuest site, then you can find me. Reach out via LinkedIn, message me, and then we can connect from there.
Excellent. Karl, it's been great. I so greatly appreciate having you on Build Out Brief. And hopefully you and I can have another conversation on other topics. I know you and I have a lot of good conversation going back and forth. And I encourage everyone to follow you on LinkedIn and take a look at the video post that Karl does, the post that he puts out there regarding certain thought topics. And then also to some of the information you put out there too is very critical and very helpful. So thank you for what you do, Karl. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
All right. Have a great day.
You too.